Let's say, for argument's sake, that your software company just got snapped up for a few billion, and you're on a bit of a spending spree to celebrate. You've bought the yacht and the supercar, and you're just about to start your 5-star trip around the world. But before you do, you've got just enough time to pick yourself up a watch. You're only going to grab one for now, and you want it to be something special. What's it going to be? If you like these videos and want to see more, please help the channel by subscribing. Don't forget to click the notification bell too. Patek Philippe has long been considered the best watchmaker in the world, and I know that you will probably be spitting feathers at the thought, citing A. Lange & Söhne or F.P. Journe as better makers of watches. And you're probably not wrong, but there's something the House of Patek has that the others just don't. It's certainly the best known of the top tier watchmakers, that's for sure, and this carries a huge amount of kudos, regardless of how its rivals match up on paper. It's a reputation that's been earned, not bought, cheesy adverts aside, by being a watchmaker that sets the standards rather than following them. Much of how the modern watch is today is thanks to Patek Philippe, from the most complicated to the very least. And then there's the looks, because after all you could say that a brand like Breguet is more deserving in the influential stakes than Patek Philippe, but it's also something of an acquired taste. Patek Philippe has always somehow managed to stay on the right side of classical, while actually being rather modern in its execution, judging size, thickness and design with a fluidity that keeps it relevant. Think of it like an accent. There are common accents, posh accents, neutral accents, yet as time moves on, what's considered normal changes, and so do the outliers common and posh. It's a change we don't notice, and we would assume that a posh accent now is the same as a posh accent from 50 years ago, but it isn't. It moves, just like Patek Philippe's design does, to avoid drifting further and further away from what's considered normal. This 5270R, for example, has a diameter of 42mm, a whopping 5mm larger than what was typical half a century ago. And it wears rose gold, a material considered flamboyant in watchmaking for a very long time, now very popular. To put that into context, the rarity of the rose gold 1950s 2499, a perpetual calendar chronograph, much like this 5270R, with a period case of 37.5mm, sold in 2016 for $2.7 million. This may all determine why Patek Philippe is popular, but it doesn't do much to illustrate why it should be worth an almost unimaginable £125,000. For that, we need to look closer, much, much closer. It's commonly understood that the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and while this method of determining capability runs the risk of leaving you with a mouthful of bad cake, there's something to be said for letting the finished product do the talking. I could bleat on all day about heritage this and savoir-faire that, but we all get enough of that from the saccharine marketing materials that make up half the page count of your average gentleman's monthly. No, this time we'll judge with our eyes. We've been told so many times that a Patek Philippe is not only assembled, but finished by hand, but what does this actually mean? Let's be clear, much of the raw cutting and shaping of components is done by machine to give the watchmaker a blank component to work with. It's from there that the part becomes fit for a Patek Philippe. Finishing is much more than decorative, it's a functional step in the manufacturing that prolongs the life of a movement. Let's start with the Geneva stripes, or Côte de Genève as they are more properly known. This stepped sweeping pattern is laid on with a grinding wheel, stroke after stroke, and its coarse surface acts as a net to catch dust and other minute fragments, preventing them from reaching the moving parts. It's a similar story with the beveling, the process of removing the sharp edge on components and polishing them to a mirror finish, preventing material fragmenting away and falling deeper into the movement. It's applied freehand, a perfect 45-degree angle that maintains the same width throughout. But it gets more detailed still. Every tooth of every wheel is individually polished to get the optimal surface and angle for meshing with its brethren, even though that means having multiple different profiles depending on the application. It's what you get when budget isn't a consideration, and that applies to every single one of the caliber CH29535 PSQs, 456 components, whether you can see them or not. And we haven't even seen what this movement can do yet. It's one of Patek Philippe's grand complications in that it carries multiple functions all within the one case. You get a perpetual calendar with leap year window, a moon phase, a day-night indicator, a chronograph, and of course the time. This sounds impressive enough, but there's even more to it than that. The execution of even the simplest of components is superlative right to the last screw. Take a look at the balance wheel, under which the escape wheel and pallet have been carefully arranged to offer a clear view. It doesn't have the weights that provide equilibrium simply screwed into the outside. It has them mounted inboard, eccentric gold discs that can be turned to move mass closer to or further from the centre. Or the chronograph minute hand, which would ordinarily move from 1 minute to the next over the course of a few seconds as the wheel's fully engaged. Not here. Patek Philippe has gone to the immense trouble of producing a sprung ratchet that climbs the minute recording wheel and snaps back in an instant. This in turn causes a problem during the reset phase, which necessitated a further mechanism to lift the ratchet clear when the minute hand is returned to zero. Sounds like a lot of effort, but that didn't stop Patek Philippe. And to think that there's just as much going on behind the dial, hidden from view, driving the perpetual calendar. It's almost a struggle to believe that each part can be so fine yet so incredibly small, the entire caliber spanning barely 3 centimetres from edge to edge. Yet here it is, in front of our very eyes. It could take 100 years to appreciate everything you see here, to absorb every last detail. From the hand finishing to the engineering ingenuity, and even the sheer scale of the work. Being both tiny and laden with parts, it's a visual demonstration of how to build what could be the ultimate wristwatch. What about you? If you had the cash to splash, what would be your ultimate wristwatch? Let us know in the comments below. Discover more exceptional watches at watchfinder.co.uk. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If there are any other watches you'd like to see reviewed, please let us know in the comments below.